To the United States now, where the government shutdown is the longest in history. It's official at 37 days. Airports are now facing travel chaos, with 13,000 air traffic controllers currently working for no pay. Danielle McLachlan is our US political commentator with us in New York. Danielle, good morning.
Morena, Ryan. How are you?
Great to see you, Danielle. What's happening with the airport situation, first off?
In a word, chaos. As you probably know, we're about 3 weeks from Thanksgiving. As you alluded to, at this point, air traffic controllers are working without pay. There are 40 airports around the country who are impacted by what are being called the shutdown slowdowns. And so there are less flights leaving and arriving into these airports. Now, the biggest travel day of the year in the United States is Thanksgiving, where families get together sometimes rather than at Christmas time. And if this continues, we are seeing folks who watch this closely saying it's going to be an absolute nightmare.
Danielle, I want to get to New York now because the Mamdani election obviously it's even been making headlines here, quite far up our news bulletins. But he wants to do so many crazy things, things that we would think of crazy here in New Zealand, like, rent freezes, free buses, government-run, local government-run grocery stores, all this kind of stuff. Does anyone actually think he will achieve what he has said he will?
I think reasonable minds can differ on the extent to which he will achieve the goals, but I think it's fair to say that he ran on ideology as opposed to being certain that he can do all the things he said he will do. So yes, government-run supermarkets is about as far left as anything I've ever heard come out of US politics. He does, want to make New York City more affordable, and it is just not affordable. So there may be ways in which he can make certain buses run for free. I think there are ways in which he can actually, through legislation, of course, expand on rent restricted apartments, which do exist here in New York. And in fact, there's a ton of new development in New York City, which gets a number of tax breaks if affordable housing is actually built in. It's called a 42A tax abatement. So there are all of these levers in the legislative arena here in New York City, but his concern is that these don't go far enough. I think what's really important and what we're seeing in his transition is that he's very inexperienced. He sort of said that, right? He's this young, enthusiastic, he's almost an Obama-esque type of politician. His transition team is full of people who were supported the former mayors and the current mayor of New York, right? So Eric Adams, who's the mayor of New York right now, but also Bill de Blasio, and before him, Michael Bloomberg. So he's stacking the ranks of people who know how to do this job, but still sort of running on this ideology. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, it's certainly energy.
It's certainly a lot of energy, a lot of good social media videos too. Danielle, what about the tariff situation? Because this is the one that's most relevant to us in New Zealand, obviously. So Supreme Court currently looking at a challenge to Trump's legitimacy, really, of enacting tariffs so wide-ranging on so many different countries, and the justification for those. And some of his own, appointees, conservative justices, sort of openly questioning what is the logic here.
Right, Ryan. So oral arguments, of course, were yesterday in the Supreme Court. And just as context here, the tariff rate, percentage rate under this administration is around 18%. When he came to power, it was around 2%. So whether he is actually legally able to do this or not, we are seeing these incredible hikes. And as you say, it's not just exporters in New Zealand and other places that are paying for these, but it's import tariffs because of retaliation, but mostly the US customer, where inflation is just crazy. The question before the Supreme Court, and this is a question that could be brought against Trump for any number of his sort of legal and political maneuvers, is does he have the power to impose these tariffs, or are they actually better suited and legally required to go through the legislature, so go to Congress? He is leaning on something called the International Emergency Economic Powers. Often these are used in wartime. We've actually seen him lean into emergency powers also with the deployment of the National Guard in states and cities around the country. So there will be a test, but all of that said, we see with Trump, it's easier to ask forgiveness than ask permission. And so whatever he wants to do, he's going to do, and it will take some time to roll it back if, in fact, the court determines that what he's done is not appropriate under those emergency powers.
Yeah, interesting stuff. We'll keep up to date with that one. Danielle, thank you. Good to see you. Danielle McLachlan, who's our commentator, American politics commentator out of New York City this morning, 22 minutes after 7, and you're watching Herald Now.